everyone, welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. Our focus today, the President of India and the ministers will soon be delivering their speeches only in Hindi. The rule comes into force as President Pranab Mukherjee has accepted the 9th report of the Committee of Parliament on Official Language. The 9th report had made 117 recommendations on the ways in which Hindi could be made more popular across the country. Now, this would be a sharp departure, of course, from norms where most speeches by the President have been given in English, accompanied on occasions by Hindi translation. So what are the implications of this move? Will it actually help in the popularity of Hindi, or would this backfire in a country where only 40% of the population uses Hindi and its dialects? That's our debate today on The Big Picture. And joining me on the panel today, we've got Ganapathy Subramaniam, who's the Chief of Bureau of Puthiya, Thalaimurai, joining us here. We have Mr. Vipul Mudgal, who's the Director and Chief Executive of Common Cause. Also Professor Rajveer Sharma, RSS thinker, here with us on the panel in studio. And also joining us from the capital, we have Professor C.P. Bhambhri, who's a historian, noted historian, joining us as well. Thank you so much for being here on this debate. Professor Bhambhri, if I could start with you. You know, some of these recommendations, in fact, most of it has been, in the phrase since 2011. The then Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, of course, had introduced it. And, as far as political thinkers are concerned, historians like yourself, also the ministers, also bureaucrats, they've been watching this move. They've been watching these recommendations carefully. What do you make of it now that we've got, in principle, a nod, in fact, from the President?
It has been a long process through which this recommendation has come. Today, the process has been that the official language, that is Hindi, should be encouraged. And the only debate has been what should be the speed through which this language should go through. So for the first time now, that issue has been settled, that at least 2 constitutional functionaries, the President of India and the Prime Minister, would be addressing public meetings and giving speeches in Hindi. So that means Hindi will now reach the whole of India, because the President of India and the Prime Minister speak for the whole country. This is one very special feature of this particular decision. The problem will arise when the non-Hindi speaking states, especially in the northeast of India and some parts of South India, will not be able to follow the letter and spirit of the speech, the essence of the speech. They may follow the literal part of speech, but they will not be able to follow the nuances of the speech. Then difficulties will arise. However, with the passage of time, such problems can be tackled if there is a goodwill around this particular problem.
Also, if there is not a pressure on ministers who don't speak in Hindi to actually give their speeches in Hindi, isn't it, Ganapathy? Although right now it is, it has been stated that only those who are comfortable, who can speak Hindi, it will be mandatory for them to speak in Hindi, as in do those speeches in Hindi. But like we said, there shouldn't be any pressure on, let's say, a minister perhaps from the northeast or from southern India, has been pointed out, to speak in Hindi. That pressure shouldn't be there. Do you think?
Right. The minister concerned was mentioned just now, Chidambaram. If you see him in Parliament, he is comfortable speaking in English.
Yes.
And happy with a couple of Tamil couplets here and there in his budget speeches, etc. Of course, he knows Hindi, he can understand Hindi, he can speak Hindi. But left to himself, he is very comfortable speaking in Hindi. He can put his message through more
in English.
In English more comfortably and with whatever elegance and whatever sense he wants to add. So that should not be snatched away. These things, okay, when anything is forced upon people, it naturally results in a lot of resistance. If it is made optional and slowly developed further, it's okay, fine, that's not a problem. But when people are told that the president will speak in Hindi, prime minister will speak in Hindi, and you will have to watch it. If the prime minister and president are speaking about something addressed to a nation on something happening in Bengal,
Yes.
or something happening in Assam or Kerala, it's rather better to use a different language, English language, which is probably understood better in those areas. Anyway, prime minister speaks most of the time in Hindi.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
But even then he tries to use the local language, a few words here and there when he wants to go to. So therefore there should be no compulsion. It's a committee has decided, president has accepted, fine, but it can always be reconsidered.
Okay. Do you agree, Mr. Mudgal? You know, at least coming from the Northeast, I can say that sense of alienation that we have with the central government. We feel like they ignore us completely all the time. And now with these speeches coming in from there in Hindi as well, do you think this is going to add to that sense of alienation, or do you think we're just making too much out of this particular move?
I think it's not a very big issue. I think it's good for a committee to make a recommendation, and it's good for the President of India to accept it.
Yes.
But I don't think it's going to make any big difference. It will be business as usual.
Yes.
You see, I tell you, when it comes to languages in India, it becomes much more complicated issue than anywhere else in the world. You know, you have Germany. The nationality of the people is German, and their language is also German.
Yes.
You know, French people, and there's a language called French.
Yes.
You know, it's quite simple.
Yeah.
But
China,
Hindi,
Chinese.
India,
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Chinese, still you have the Cantonese and Mandarin.
Yes.
But you know, in India, you have like huge amount of, a large number of languages, and you can't yet say that we are a Hindu Rashtra and our language is Hindi. And I hope we will not be that kind of a country, because we are a multicultural, multilingual country.
Yes.
Now, as a Hindi speaker, I like Hindi to flourish.
Yes.
Like I want all other Indian languages which happen to be anyway the first cousins of my language, Hindi, in many ways. But you know, to impose Hindi will be a tragedy. If it will become a part of a package where somebody tells me what to wear, what to eat,
Yes.
who to speak to, which language you speak in, then I think it will become a tragedy. Otherwise, I think it will be part of the business as usual.
Yeah, Professor Rajveer, you know, one of the comments I read on this story is that, you know, the government is trying, or perhaps in the next few years, we will see the importance of vernacular languages actually decreasing further and further. And this also, in a way, if I'm reading it out correctly, it's also methodology where only Hindi belt politicians can now aspire to be a prime minister or be a central minister. Do you agree with that? Do you think that this puts a pressure on even you know, aspiring bureaucrats for that matter? Because you know, a lot of them coming from the northeast and even southern India, and even for that matter some parts of western India as well, you know, the need to be able to speak in Hindi, is that going to become an issue in years to come?
No, I think let us be very clear on two counts.
Yes.
One, whatever has been accepted in the report, it is not an imposition, it is not a compulsion, it is not mandatory. And this is number one. So therefore, no question of imposing Hindi on anyone. Number two, there is a constitutional responsibility. Constitution has established an official language commission. Constitution also provides for Rajbhasha kind of a department. And we have a parliamentary panel on official language. What is the objective of all these institutional arrangements? Objective was that slowly and slowly we should popularize the use of Hindi. Objective was that we should incentivize or motivate people to use Hindi. This is number two. And therefore, we must work at least slowly maybe towards that direction so that we are able to fulfill the constitutional objectives. Number three, if one speaks in Hindi and it is translated into English, I think even now, the president, suppose, speaks in Hindi, he doesn't speak in the language of the Northeast, he doesn't speak in the language of South India.
But then it's a,
No,
but
no,
English is...
let us be very clear.
Yes.
So, if he doesn't speak the vernacular languages, other vernacular languages
why should there be a problem with Hindi?
So, so therefore, what we do is that we first speak in English and then we translate into Hindi. Now it can be the other way around, that we speak in Hindi and then we translate it into English. So the problem doesn't arise for those who don't understand Hindi. They will understand English. The translation will come. So I think it's a very naive and irrelevant kind of a issue that we are raising, that it is an attempt to impose perhaps Hindi.
But the
It
thing
is,
is,
it is merely.
but the thing is, it's not just to do with the speeches, isn't it, Ganapathy? It's not just to do with the speeches. You also have these other recommendations that have come in. Although we are trying to focus, of course, on
No,
the
but
on the
other
present.
recommendations have not been accepted yet.
Yes,
Except the Air
which
India.
is
I mean,
exactly why we are saying
Then make Air India even more non-competitive.
And let me
tickets in Hindi, you know, the
True.
newspapers and all
But
of that in
will
Hindi.
also be in English as well. It is not merely in Hindi. The tickets would be both in Hindi as well as English. Presently, it is only English, and even if 40% is a big number, and therefore, at least those who don't understand English, they should get things in Hindi. Number one.
Yes.
Number two, I will submit very humbly that India is a country where perhaps maybe Tamil Nadu, barring that state, every state understands Hindi. May not be able to speak Hindi, but even the northeastern states, you might have seen many people speak Hindi.
Yes, yes.
And they also understand Hindi. Now, if they understand Hindi, it can be an incentive, it can be a motivation for them to
learn the
understand
language.
and
Yes.
practice Hindi. And I think it would be a step in the right direction to create a sense of oneness across the nation. Right? It may not be an imposition. By imposition, you cannot achieve the objective of oneness.
Yes.
But if it is slow effort
Yes.
to incentivize people, to motivate people to use Hindi, understand Hindi, I think it would be a welcome step.
Professor Bhambhri, do you agree this is the right way forward in trying to make Hindi more popular? Because you know, it may not be something that, for example, even me, I understand it and I can speak it, but I perhaps couldn't be able to hold a debate in Hindi with you. But perhaps with steps like this, I may become more comfortable with it. Do you agree?
That was my point, that one, from today onwards, we must make every effort to clarify the issue to non-Hindi speaking regions. Many of them suspect that Hindi is being imposed. That is our history. We should not forget that when Lal Bahadur Shastri as Prime Minister had declared the acceptance of this recommendation, there was self-immolation in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu ministers had resigned. Only 3 years back, there was a minister in the UPA government from Tamil Nadu who did not understand Hindi. Hence, the propagation of Hindi should always be contingent upon the feelings of non-Hindi speaking regions, which are from Kashmir to Nagaland. This is my one point. Constitutional provisions are not to be implemented in a literal manner. They are to be implemented by keeping in mind the complexity of multilingual country, and people love their language. Second, we must disabuse this idea that from now onwards only Hindi speaking people will be elected to the office of President and Prime Minister, because the impression will go that if they have to speak in Hindi, they should also belong to Hindi region. This would be a very unfortunate impression, and we have to take great care that we do not spread this kind of message that South Indians or Northeast Indians are debarred from holding the highest office of this country. So we should be very cautious, and the yardstick is how do the non-Hindi speaking states, people, regions, sub-regions respond to this decision of Hindi being spread, Hindi being popularized in administration. it will not stop here. Once you start popularizing Hindi in administration, next step will be that in all central universities, in all central educational institutions, Hindi should become the medium of instruction. That will be another point of controversy and debate.
In fact, we are already towards that. We are already towards that. Ganapathy, we do know that another one of those recommendations was, seeking Hindi as a compulsory subject from class 8 to class 10 in all CBSE and central schools. So that obviously doesn't mean just the Hindi belt. It means CBSE schools in all parts of the country. Do you see that as a worry? Do you see that as a controversy that could perhaps crop up?
In fact, recently somebody has filed a public interest litigation saying that Hindi should be made compulsory in schools all across India. And in Karnataka, the government is saying that you should make Kannada compulsory in all schools.
Yes.
So, rather than leaving it to the choice of the people, they are trying to some way suggest that things should be imposed, which is not the right way to do in a democratic country. We are not a dictatorship. And also we should see the legacy of the language problems and how we are trying to integrate. Of course, maybe a few decades from now all these things won't matter because your phone will translate any language into whatever language you want to listen to or read. So that problem will be solved. But right now, say Tamil Nadu for example, there was such a large Hindi agitation. And one generation of people did not study Hindi because of the imposition issue alone. And it was their loss. And subsequently, the other people who also followed them, it is their own loss. First, teach them Hindi, let them learn, it will be good for them. But don't impose it on them. And also things like saying that this should be made compulsory, that should be made compulsory. Here, it is very fine that it is very clearly mentioned that it is optional. Anybody who can read and write Hindi, let them do it, and others need not follow it. But even those who read and write Hindi, why should they follow it if they are comfortable in speaking in English? Let them do it. So that imposition is the only issue which should be sorted out, and all the apprehensions of the people should be completely cleared. Then it is much easier and simpler to do. Promoting Hindi is nothing wrong. Nobody is going to oppose it. But you should not go and interfere in the freedom of choice of others.
Absolutely. But then if you leave it to all the non-Hindi speaking states to choose whether they want Hindi or of course their local language, the vernacular language, how many takers are you going to have for Hindi? So in that sense, again, that's another challenge, isn't it? Where do you find that balance, that you promote a language, which is of course crucial, which is important for a country like India, and an added language, the knowledge of another language, why not? Whether it's Hindi or Chinese or German, why not? I say the more you know, the better. And especially in a country like India, it is important to know a language like Hindi. But then if you don't impose and you leave it as, a choice, how many takers do you have for that as well?
This is not an imposition. I mean, this is just a committee.
This is not, but I'm just saying, as if we see the days ahead, do we see an imposition of sorts in this way in the other states?
We have a way of messing around, sometimes with best of intentions, we lose the point completely. I mean, we saw during Jallikattu in Tamil Nadu that whoever was saying was not able to understand the real aspirations and the real issues. It was not even about one festival or whatever. It was about much wider discontentment, etc. So
the same issue in Nagaland, in fact, it was not just about women's reservation. It was basically about
So I think
the
one is
culture and
that
tradition.
when we imagine one India and oneness of India, we should not do it in a narrow sense. We should do it very broadly. You see, in schools of Delhi, my son was studying in a school until recently. The only languages other than Hindi and English that you can learn are French and German and perhaps Spanish or something like that. And these are very popular. I would say that why not teach Tamil to children in North India? Telugu, in fact, when Chaudhry Devilal was the Chief Minister of Haryana, NTR was the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, and both of them were very good friends. So actually, both of them made Hindi and Telugu the second languages of their state. So I would say that a smarter way of doing this would be to promote like all Indian languages and don't treat any language as a pariah or a second language. And then when you promote Hindi, I mean, translations are so good. If I read a translation of say Anantamurthy in Hindi or Rabindranath Tagore in Hindi,
Yes.
it's so much better than I read it in English. Vivekananda, you know, I read Asha Purna Devi, Mahashweta Devi, Bimal Mitro, you know, all of them in Hindi are so good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you tell me that you shall read them only in Hindi, and no other language, I'll say, come on, give me a break.
Yes.
I mean, you are affecting my choice. So I think it is, one is that issue. The other is that, look, we should not forget, even for a minute, that we are a multilingual, multicultural country. And that is the beauty, that is a strength. It's not a weakness. And English is also one of our languages. 22 languages we have.
Yes.
English is also our own English.
Yeah. But that's again, maybe I'm just trying to be a bit negative about this whole thing, because we're trying to take out different facets of it, of course. You know, and if we have a president who speaks in Hindi, we have a prime minister who speaks in Hindi, we have all the central ministers who speak in Hindi, and slowly perhaps bureaucracy as well, Hindi becomes mandatory. People who speak in English, do they feel alienated? You know, are they then looked down upon?
Not
that,
at all.
You know, does that eventually, you know, does that become like, why are you speaking English when Hindi is something which is accepted? You know, Hindi is the language to be speaking in. Do you think that kind of you know, that kind of an effect eventually develops
Tracy,
among people?
I tell you what,
Yes.
the politicians are very smart people. I think they are the smartest people on earth, on the planet. You know, when it comes to their own interest, they would speak in any language. You know, you see them wearing the Naga dress and Manipur dress, and you
Yes.
know, overnight they become, and you know, use all kinds of words. So I mean, they will do what is favorable to them. When it does not suit them, you can't make a Tamil politician or Telugu politician speak Hindi. But when it does, he will speak fluent Hindi. I mean, I have absolutely no doubt about it. The problem here is that, you know, it's the idea of India. And I think Hindi is quite central, has been quite central, but I mean, there are ways of doing it. There are intelligent ways and stupid ways of doing it. And we have unfortunately been doing things in a very ham-handed fashion. So I think it's time we kind of take it as a package. All are our children, all are our languages. We are a federal nation. Yes, Hindi can be first among equals, but we promote Hindi and we promote Manipuri also.
Yes,
we
yes.
promote Santhali and Dogri and Bodo also.
Yes.
Why not?
Professor Rajveer, do you see that happening in the near future? Do you?
I think
Because eventually I think it depends on the children. It depends.
I broadly agree with what
Yes.
Professor Bhambhri said
Yes.
and what my co-panelists are saying. But let me put three things very clearly again.
Very quickly though, because I'm running short
we
of
should
time.
not try
Yes.
to create artificial fears.
Okay.
Number two, there was a three-language formula already that was in operation, and it worked. It worked because the vernacular language also the students learnt, and Hindi also they learnt. So it is not a question of imposition, it's a
Yes.
question of pushing forward if we can.
Yes.
And therefore, if we can push forward, I should not be a stranger in Tamil Nadu. If I go today, I am a stranger because they don't understand me, I don't understand them.
Yes.
They don't communicate with me, I don't communicate. So I am a foreigner in my own land.
Yes.
Now, to avoid that kind of a situation, I agree with Mudgal Sahib that we should also push some other regional language or a vernacular language being taught in some other areas.
Yes.
And along with Hindi. Fine enough, there is no problem. But that was the essence of three-language formula. English, Hindi plus one vernacular language, if I understand it correctly. And it worked because if I go now to Andhra, people understand me. I can communicate maybe a broken Hindi they speak,
Yes.
but they understand me. So that is what I am saying, that there's a time to create bonds rather than create divisions in the
Yes.
name of fear
Yeah.
that it may happen, you may impose it. Nobody is imposing, it's all optional.
Yes.
That is what has to be appreciated.
One to mention, Hindi movies, the greatest example of promotion of Hindi.
Yes.
Such a sweet way. Nobody is compelling you or me or anybody else to watch a Hindi movie.
I
but
credit all my
everybody
Hindi, most
watches
of my Hindi to
movies.
Hindi movies.
Everywhere from Kashmir to Kanyakumari.
Yes.
But then in the school, when you go, you have to take Sanskrit, you have to take
Yes.
French or
Yes.
read them. You don't have a choice of say which language it is. And now there are also proposals that only Indian languages should be taught. Even that is also not wrong.
Yes.
You make things available. Let people pick their own choice. Why are we seeing Hindi movies? Because we like it. If
Yes.
we like French movies, maybe people will see it. So that choice should be given, and I think that is the best way of promoting Hindi movies, music and literature. What better than that?
But the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha TV are showing Malayalam movies. I love them, because they're strapline
might be
Hindi.
understanding
It's
them.
so good,
You
yeah.
might understand that
So
language.
it comes with a translation.
With the subtitles,
Yeah,
yeah,
subtitles at the bottom.
All right. Well, we are all of agreement that Hindi is something that definitely.
But
needs
we are
to be more
speaking in English,
popularized.
huh?
Yeah,
We
speak
are
in
all
English.
speaking in
but that
English.
is perhaps because of me, because I'm more comfortable speaking English. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me. Thank you so much, Professor Bhambhri, for joining me. I'm sorry we're running short of time. But we all agree, yes, Hindi and perhaps other vernacular languages too need to be promoted as much as perhaps how much English is promoted in a lot of schools, and perhaps in days to come we'll see that changing and there will be no imposition. That is the hope, really. We'll leave it here on The Big Picture. Thank you so much for joining us.